The war room aboard the Draxian flagship Decimator hummed with the quiet confidence of a species that had never known defeat. Commander Vextar, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh blue lights, manipulated the holographic display with surgical precision. Before him, a small blue planet rotated peacefully, its white clouds swirling across continents that had no idea death was watching from the void. "Look at this primitive backwater," Vextar hissed, his mandibles clicking with disdain. The translator, embedded in his throat, converted his words into the universal galactic tongue. "They call themselves humans, yet they still crawl across their world's surface like insects." His tactical officer, Zoran, leaned forward, studying the energy readings, cascading across multiple screens. The data was almost laughably primitive. No quantum shield generators, Commander. No faster-than-light communication networks. Their most advanced vessels barely escape their own gravity well. He paused, examining another readout. They're still burning processed hydrocarbons for energy. How delightfully archaic. Vextar's secondary arms gestured dismissively toward the tactical display. 17 civilizations have fallen before us this cycle alone. The Altarians lasted 3 days. The Centauri Federation managed a full week before surrender. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. ... Earth will be conquered before their sun sets twice. The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances. They had seen this routine before. The Draxian Empire had perfected the art of overwhelming technologically inferior species. Standard procedure: orbital bombardment, infrastructure destruction, population control, resource extraction. Simple, efficient, profitable. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, "we're detecting approximately 7 billion individual life signs across the planet's surface. Remarkable population density for such a primitive world. 7 billion. Vextar's eyes widened slightly. "Excellent. More workers for the mining operations." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their military installations first. Communications hubs, power generation facilities, government centers. Standard intimidation protocol. But here's where things get interesting." You see, the Draxians had made their calculations based on technology scans and energy signatures. They had measured humanity's tools, counted their weapons, analyzed their defenses. What they hadn't measured was something far more dangerous: the human spirit when cornered. The first wave of Draxian warships dropped out of hyperspace like metallic thunderclouds. Massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a city block, materialized. In Earth's atmosphere, with the casual arrogance of bullies entering a playground, their weapons charged with the distinctive whine of plasma cannons preparing to unleash hell. In those first moments, time seemed suspended. The great ships hung motionless above major cities, their hulls casting shadows across millions of upturned faces. Then, with devastating precision, they opened fire. The attacks were surgical, calculated, designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority. Military bases across 3 continents erupted in brilliant flashes of superheated plasma. The Pentagon's outer ring simply vanished, along with portions of NORAD's surface installations. European NATO headquarters disappeared in seconds. Asian defense networks went dark as their control centers were reduced to molten craters. The Draxians expected immediate capitulation. Their experience with 37 other conquered worlds had taught them that demonstration of superior firepower typically resulted in swift surrender. After all, who would be foolish enough to fight a war they couldn't possibly win? But something unexpected happened, something that would haunt Commander Vextar. For the rest of his existence, the planet fell silent. Not the silence of submission, but the silence of a predator holding its breath. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, in a bunker designed to survive. Nuclear war? Colonel Jack Morrison watched the tactical displays with eyes that had seen too much combat to show fear. His weathered hands, scarred from decades of military service, moved with deliberate precision across the command console. His communications officer reported, voice tight with controlled emotion, "All surface installations have been hit. We're operating on backup power and isolated networks." Morrison nodded grimly. At 62, he had commanded forces in 3 different conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The weight of humanity's survival rested on decisions. Made in the next few minutes, patch me through to the emergency broadcasting system, he ordered. All channels, all frequencies, worldwide distribution. What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity stopped being a collection of competing nations. It became something far more terrifying to their enemies. A unified species with nothing left to lose. Morrison's voice, rough with emotion and authority, echoed across every television, radio, and communication device on Earth. This is Colonel Jack Morrison, NORD Command. We are under attack by hostile extraterrestrial forces. All nations, all peoples, all differences end now. Humanity stands united. His words carried the weight of finality, the absolute certainty of a man who had just watched his world burn. God help them, because we won't. In Moscow, former enemies began sharing classified military intelligence. In Beijing, advanced weapons research was transmitted to American laboratories. In London, diplomatic protocols were abandoned as humanity's survival instinct kicked in with primal intensity. The Draxians had made a fundamental miscalculation. They had studied humanity's technology, but they had failed to understand humanity's nature. This was a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and 2 world wars. A species that had learned to fight, adapt, overcome through millennia of conflict. Commander Vexstar stood in his command center, watching his tactical displays with growing unease. The humans weren't broadcasting surrender. They weren't evacuating their cities. Instead, energy signatures were spiking across the planet as manufacturing facilities shifted to wartime production. Sir, his sensor operator reported with barely concealed confusion. We're detecting massive industrial mobilization across all major population centers. They appear to be preparing for war. Vexstar's mandibles clicked nervously. Impossible. They lack the technology to threaten us. But deep in his warrior's heart, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. The first whisper of doubt. The humans had just demonstrated something more dangerous than advanced technology. They had shown unity, determination, and the terrifying calm of a species that had decided to fight. The war that would reshape the galaxy had begun, and neither side fully understood what they had unleashed. But one thing was certain: the universe was about to learn. Why you should never underestimate a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to survive. Want to discover how small, consistent actions can create massive, game-changing results? Just like humanity's step-by-step rise from primitive planet to galactic superpower, the principle of compounding can transform your life in ways you never imagined. Click the link in the description to watch my next video about the incredible power of compounding. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically in the abandoned subway tunnel beneath Manhattan, casting eerie shadows across makeshift laboratory equipment that had been hastily assembled from salvaged university gear and military hardware. Dr. Rebecca Hayes moved through the chaos like a woman possessed. Her usually pristine lab coat now stained with coffee, sweat, and what appeared to be alien lubricant from the twisted metal fragments scattered across every available surface. For days since the world had changed forever, and Rebecca hadn't closed her eyes for more than 20 minutes at a time. Her hands trembled slightly as she manipulated a piece of crystalline technology that hummed with an energy signature, completely unknown to human science. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of a brilliant mind pushed to its absolute limits, fueled by nothing but caffeine, determination, and the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Dr. Hayes. The voice echoed through the tunnel as heavy boots splashed through puddles of stagnant water. Captain Mike Rodriguez emerged from the shadows, his marine dress uniform torn and blackened from combat. Smoke still rose from his tactical vest, and his face bore the grim expression of a man who had watched good soldiers die fighting an enemy they barely understood. "Tell me you've got something, Doc," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the weight of desperation barely held in check. My boys are getting torn apart out there. We lost another squad trying to take down one of their patrol craft.
Standard weapons
Are useless against their shields." Rebecca looked up from her work, her eyes blazing with the kind of exhaustion that transforms into manic energy. A slight smile played at the corners of her mouth as she held up a device that looked like a cross between a computer processor and a piece of alien jewelry. The crystalline structure pulsed with otherworldly light, casting rainbow patterns across the concrete walls. "Better than something, Captain," she said, her voice hoarse but filled with scientific triumph. "I've got everything." She gestured to the elaborate setup surrounding them. Their weapons use quantum resonance frequencies. Each shot creates a harmonic pattern that disrupts molecular bonds. Brilliant, really. But here's the beautiful part about quantum mechanics. If we can reverse the polarity... She trailed off, her mind racing ahead of her words as she connected components with the precision of a surgeon. Rodriguez watched, fascinated despite himself. As the woman who had been teaching theoretical physics at Columbia just a week ago now wielded alien technology like she'd been born to it. But here's where the story gets really interesting. See, while Rebecca was having her breakthrough in the tunnels below, something remarkable was happening on the surface. Something that would make the Draxians question everything they thought they knew about primitive civilizations. Captain Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. "Rodriguez, this is Command. We're getting reports from across the globe. You need to see this." Above ground, the Draxian occupation forces were encountering something their sophisticated tactical computers simply couldn't process. The humans weren't just fighting back with desperate courage, they were adapting. And they were doing it at a speed that violated every known principle of technological development. In a bombed-out factory in Detroit, Tom Bradley wiped grease from his hands and stepped back to admire his creation. The 43-year-old assembly line worker had spent the last 72 hours welding together what looked like a collection of scrap metal, car parts, and salvaged electronics. To most people, it would have appeared to be junk. But when Tom activated the device, it hummed to life with the distinctive whine of a plasma cannon. "Sarah, fire it up," he called to his colleague, former Ford engineer who had been working on electric vehicle batteries before the world ended. The improvised weapon discharged with a brilliant flash, punching a hole through 3 feet of reinforced concrete. "How the hell did you figure that out?" Sarah asked, staring at the smoking crater in disbelief. Tom grinned, his face streaked. "With soot and determination, same way I figured out how to fix a transmission without a manual. You look at what's broken, you figure out how it should work, and you make it better." Meanwhile, 1,500 miles away in Texas, Lisa Parker was putting the finishing touches on what had once been a crop duster. The agricultural engineer had spent her career designing systems to spray pesticides over vast farming operations. Now, she was retrofitting aircraft with weapon systems that would have impressed military contractors. "Jimmy, hand me that power." Coupling, she called to her teenage son, who had become her assistant in this impossible project. The plane before them bristled with improvised energy weapons. Its agricultural spraying system converted into something that could lay down suppressing fire across a battlefield. "I'll be sure this thing won't blow up when we start it?" Jimmy asked, eyeing the collection of alien technology, car batteries, and farming equipment with teenage skepticism. Lisa laughed, the sound carrying both exhaustion and exhilaration. "Honey, at this point, everything's experimental. But your grandfather didn't survive the Depression by playing it safe, and we're not going to survive this by being cautious." The pattern was repeating itself across the globe. In garages, basements, and abandoned buildings, ordinary people were achieving extraordinary things. Mechanics were building energy weapons, engineers were creating force fields, computer programmers were hacking alien communication systems. Back in his command ship, Commander Vexstar stared at his tactical displays with growing horror. The casualty reports streaming in from his ground forces painted a picture that defied everything he understood about primitive civilizations. "Sir," his communications officer reported, his voice tight with barely concealed panic. "We're detecting massive energy signatures across their planet. The humans aren't just copying our weapons, they're improving them." Vexstar's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the data. Impossible. Their technology base is centuries behind ours. It should take them decades to even understand our basic principles. Commander, his tactical officer interrupted. "You need to see this." The holographic display shifted to show a human weapons facility that had been constructed in an abandoned shopping mall. They're manufacturing energy weapons using what appears to be kitchen appliances and automotive parts. The truth was hitting Vexstar like a plasma blast to the face. The Draxians had conquered 37 worlds by overwhelming technologically inferior species. But those species had tried to fight using their existing technology. Humans were different. They weren't just using what they had, they were creating what they needed. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "we're losing contact with Patrol Group 7. Last transmission indicated they were engaging human forces, equipped with, I'm not sure how to describe this, improvised quantum disruptors." Down in the subway tunnel, Rebecca Hayes was putting the finishing touches on her masterpiece. The device in her hands represented 4 days of non-stop work, 3 theoretical breakthroughs, and about 6 violations of known physics. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had just cracked the code of the universe, "tell your boys to get ready. Next, we're about to even the odds." The crystalline device pulsed with increasing intensity, its harmonic frequencies creating a sound that seemed to resonate in the very bones of everyone present. Rodriguez watched in fascination as the woman before him held what might be humanity's salvation in her trembling hands. "What exactly does it do?" he asked. Rebecca's smile was sharp with scientific triumph and barely contained fury. "It turns their own weapons against them. Every shot they fire now powers our defenses. Every shield they activate becomes a beacon for our targeting systems." She looked up from her work, her eyes reflecting the otherworldly light of the device. "Commander Vexstar wanted to see what primitive humans could do under pressure. He's about to find out." The war was entering a new phase, and the galaxy was about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity. We don't just survive challenges, we use them as stepping stones to become stronger. The same principle that had driven human innovation for millennia was now being applied to alien technology, and the results were about to shake the foundations of the Draxian Empire. Just like Rebecca's breakthrough came from building on previous discoveries, your success depends on the compound effect of small, consistent actions. Want to discover how this powerful principle can transform your life? Check out my video on the power of compounding. It's the same force that's turning humanity from prey into predators. The salt spray hit Captain Rodriguez's face as he stood on what had once been the flight deck of the USS Gerald Ford, now humanity's first improvised starship, 3 weeks ago. This nuclear-powered aircraft carrier had been designed to launch F-35 fighters against Earth-bound enemies. Today, it bristled with alien energy weapons, quantum shield generators, modifications that would have made its original designers weep with either pride or horror. Rodriguez gripped the tactical rail as the massive vessel shuddered through its first atmospheric exit. The retrofitted carrier groaned and protested against forces it was never meant to endure. But human engineering had always been about making the impossible work through sheer determination and creative problem-solving. "All units, this is Phoenix Command." Rodriguez broadcast across the communication channels, his voice carrying the weight of 3 weeks of desperate preparation. Around him, the most unlikely fleet in human history waited for the order that would change everything. "Today we take the fight to them. Today we show these bastards what happens when you mess with Earth." The response came back in dozens of voices, each representing a story of transformation that defied belief. Cargo ship captains who had learned to pilot weapons platforms, airline pilots who now commanded fighter squadrons, cruise ship staff who had become the backbone of mobile command centers. But here's where things get absolutely insane. The human fleet surrounding Phoenix Command wasn't just unusual, it was a testament to the kind of desperate innovation that emerges when a species faces extinction. Picture this: a fleet composed entirely of converted civilian vessels, each one jury-rigged with alien technology and powered by the kind of determination that had built pyramids and sent humans to the moon. The Walmart Express, a massive cargo vessel that had once carried consumer goods across the Pacific, now bristled with energy cannons salvaged from downed Draxian fighters. Its captain, former merchant marine officer Janet Thompson, had spent 2 weeks learning to operate weapons systems that violated every principle of physics she understood. Phoenix Command, this is Big Box Leader. Thompson's voice crackled over the radio. Cargo bay modifications complete. We're carrying enough firepower to level a city, and we're itching to use it. Nearby, the Carnival Destiny had been transformed from a floating resort into a mobile command center. Its massive communication arrays, originally designed to provide internet access to vacationing families, now coordinated the movements of humanity's most desperate gamble. The ship's former entertainment director, Mark Stevens, had become the fleet's intelligence officer. Using his crowd management skills to coordinate battlefield communications, "Phoenix, this is Party Central," Stevens reported with the kind of gallows humor that had kept humans sane through every crisis in their history. "We've got eyes on the enemy formation. Looks like they're about to get a party invitation they'll never forget." But the real miracle was happening in the converted laboratories scattered throughout the fleet. Dr. Rebecca Hayes, now bearing the title of Chief Technology Officer of the Human Defense Fleet, had achieved something that violated every known principle of technological development. Her adaptive weapon systems didn't just learn from battle, they evolved in real time, creating countermeasures faster than the Draxians could adapt. Captain Hayes called from her mobile laboratory, surrounded by screens showing weapon efficiency reports that would have made alien scientists weep with envy. The quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing. Each engagement is teaching our systems how to fight more effectively. We're not just matching their technology, we're surpassing it. The transformation was visible in every aspect of the fleet. Passenger jets that had once carried tourists now flew attack formations with the precision of military units. Their pilots, former commercial aviators, learned to dogfight in three-dimensional space using principles adapted from aerial combat and video game tactics. "Phoenix Command, this is Skybus Squadron," reported Captain Maria Santos, former Delta Airlines pilot, now commanding a wing of converted passenger aircraft. "We're locked and loaded. These birds may not look like much, but they'll dance circles around anything the Draxians can throw at us." The enemy response was exactly what Rodriguez had hoped for. Commander Vextar, watching from his flagship as the human fleet approached, felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. His tactical displays showed formations that defied military logic, vessels that shouldn't exist, and energy signatures that violated known physics. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with disbelief, "their lead vessel appears to be a modified atmospheric aircraft carrier. It's operating in vacuum using technology we can't identify. It's impossible." Vextar clicked, but his certainty was crumbling. "Deploy the third battle group. Standard engagement protocols." That's when the real show began. The human fleet didn't engage like any military force in galactic history. They fought like what they were: desperate civilians who had been pushed too far and had nothing left to lose. The Walmart Express opened fire with a barrage that lit up space like a 4th of July celebration. But instead of conventional targeting, Captain Thompson used the retail logistics experience to coordinate supply chain attacks, hitting the Draxian formation at precisely the points that would cause maximum disruption. "Take that, you alien jerks," she shouted over the communication channel. Black Friday's got nothing on this. The battle quickly devolved into what could only be described as organized chaos. The humans fought with patterns that no military computer could predict because they weren't following military doctrine. They were improvising solutions using whatever worked. A converted garbage scow, the Staten Island Express piloted by former New York taxi driver Danny Walsh, became the symbol of human defiance. Walsh had spent 30 years navigating Manhattan traffic, developing reflexes and spatial awareness that translated perfectly to three-dimensional combat. "Phoenix Command, this is Garbage Truck." Walsh's Brooklyn accent crackled over the radio. As he lined up his impossible approach, "I'm making a delivery special." What happened next became legend. Walsh piloted his converted waste management vessel through a formation of Draxian fighters. Using evasive maneuvers learned from decades of avoiding other taxis, his ship's hull, reinforced with alien armor plating, slammed through the shields of a Draxian cruiser while broadcasting classic rock music at maximum volume. Sir Vextar's tactical officers screamed over the sounds of explosions echoing through their ship. They're using industrial mining charges as ship-killing weapons. And their pilots, their flying patterns that should be impossible. Draxian commander watched in horror as his organized formations were systematically destroyed by what could only be described as controlled chaos. These humans weren't just fighting a war. They were bringing the same innovative spirit that had built their civilization to the art of destruction. "Retreat," Vextar ordered, his voice cracking with panic. "Signal the fleet full withdrawal to the outer system." But as his forces fled, they carried with them the knowledge that they had awakened something terrible. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were enjoying it. The same species that had created art, music, and literature was now applying that creative energy to the complete destruction of their enemies. Rodriguez watched the enemy retreat with grim satisfaction. The improvised fleet had achieved something that would have been impossible just weeks ago. They had taken the fight to a technologically superior enemy and won. "All units. This is Phoenix Command," he broadcast. "Phase 1 complete. But this is just the beginning. We've shown them what happens when you threaten our home.
Ow.
Now we show them what happens when we come for theirs." The phase. And the galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome any challenge through sheer determination and creative problem-solving. Just like the human fleet achieved the impossible by building on small improvements that compounded into overwhelming advantage. Your success comes from the same principle. Want to discover how small, consistent actions can create massive, unstoppable momentum in your life? Check out my video on the power of compounding. It's the same force that transformed humanity from victims into victors. The clock in the Situation Room beneath the Pentagon read 0600 hours when the last Draxian vessel disappeared from Earth's orbital sensors. 6 hours. That's how long the alien retreat had lasted before humanity decided that running away wasn't good enough, not nearly good enough. General Patricia Stone stood at the head of the war table, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun that had somehow survived 3 weeks of apocalyptic warfare. At 58, she had commanded forces in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The weight of human vengeance rested on her shoulders, and she carried it with the cold precision of a surgeon preparing for the most important operation of her career. "Gentlemen, ladies," she began, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. 6 hours ago, these invaders retreated from our planet thinking they could regroup and try again. Her eyes swept across the assembled leaders from every nation on Earth. They made a critical error in judgment. The room was silent except for the hum of quantum communication arrays that now connected every military installation on the planet. Russian generals sat beside American admirals. Chinese strategists worked alongside Israeli intelligence officers. The old world order had died the moment the first Draxian plasma bolt struck Earth, and what emerged was something far more dangerous. "They came to our home," Stone continued, her voice carrying the cold fury of a mother protecting her children. "They killed our people. They destroyed our cities. They thought we were weak because we fought among ourselves." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "They thought wrong." Her next words carried across every military frequency. On Earth, transmitted to every vessel in humanity's improvised fleet. Broadcast to every resistance cell still fighting in occupied territories. Show them how wrong they were. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, manufacturing facilities across 6 continents shifted into wartime production that made World War II look like a warm-up exercise. The species that had once built atomic weapons in less than 4 years was now mass-producing quantum disruptors. Plasma cannons and shield generators, using technology they had barely understood just weeks ago. But here's where the story gets absolutely terrifying. For anyone who happened to be on the receiving end of human fury, you see, the Draxians had made the mistake of giving humanity time to think, time to plan, and time to get really, really angry. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding an armada that defied every principle of naval architecture, led the charge toward the Draxian staging area near Jupiter. His flagship, the converted aircraft carrier Phoenix, had been joined by vessels that looked like they'd been designed by mad scientists with unlimited budgets and no regard for conventional physics. The Amazon Prime, a former delivery vessel, now bristled with weapon systems that could punch holes through asteroids. Its captain, former UPS driver Steve Johnson, had discovered that the same logistics skills that delivered packages on time worked perfectly for coordinating orbital bombardments. "Phoenix Command, this is express delivery," Johnson's voice crackled over the radio with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from finally finding the perfect job. "We've got a special delivery for our alien friends. It's overnight shipping. No returns accepted." The Tesla Roadster. Yes, someone had actually weaponized Elon Musk's personal car that had been floating in space. Since 2018, now served as a high-speed reconnaissance drone operated by a team of former SpaceX engineers who had decided that if they were going to die in space, they might as well do it with style. But the real miracle was happening in the mobile laboratories scattered throughout the fleet. Dr. Rebecca Hayes had achieved something that redefined the laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. Her quantum disruptors didn't just penetrate Draxian shields, they turned the aliens' own technology against them. Captain Hayes reported from her laboratory aboard the Phoenix, her voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of someone who had just solved the ultimate puzzle. "The quantum resonance cascade is stable. Every shot they fire now powers our weapon systems. Their shields are actually making our guns stronger. The implications are staggering." The Draxians had built their empire on technological superiority. But humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had created technology that grew stronger through conflict. Commander Vextar, watching from his flagship, as the human fleet approached like a swarm of angry wasps, felt his certainty crumble into dust. His tactical displays showed impossible formations, vessels that shouldn't exist, and energy signatures that violated everything he understood about physics. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely concealed panic, "their lead formation is broadcasting music while they attack. Military analysis suggests it's something called heavy metal played at volumes that should damage their own equipment." "This is impossible," Vextar raged as his flagship systems began failing around him. "They're not just primitive, they're insane." He was absolutely right. Humanity had embraced the madness of total war with the enthusiasm of a species that had nothing left to lose. The same creative energy that had produced Shakespeare and Mozart was now focused entirely on the complete destruction of their enemies. Former enemies now fought side by side with the brotherhood of shared purpose. Russian cosmonauts and American pilots shared the same bunks. Chinese engineers and German scientists collaborated on weapons that seemed to mock the very concept of physical limitations. "Phoenix Command, this is Vodka Squadron," came the heavily accented voice of Colonel Dmitry Petrov, whose converted Soyuz capsule had somehow been transformed into a fighter capable of taking on vessels 10 times its size. "We are ready to serve these aliens their last meal." The battle that followed redefined the concept of warfare. The humans didn't just fight, they improvised, adapted, and overcame every challenge with the kind of creative problem-solving that had built their entire civilization. The final engagement took place in the asteroid belt, where human ingenuity met Draxian desperation in a conflict that would be remembered as the moment Earth announced its arrival as a galactic power. When the plasma fires finally died down and the quantum explosions faded, the once mighty Draxian Empire existed only in the scattered memories of its few survivors. Commander Vextar, his ship crippled and his fleet destroyed, managed one final transmission before his communication systems died. His message, broadcast across every frequency the Galactic Council monitored, carried the weight of absolute defeat and genuine terror. Warning to all civilizations, he transmitted, his voice broken by the realization of what he had unleashed. The species known as human has achieved spaceflight capability. Classification: Apex Predator. Recommendation: avoid all contact. The silence that followed was deafening. The galaxy had just learned that Earth wasn't just another primitive world to be conquered. It was home to a species that treated impossible challenges as opportunities for innovation. As the human fleet regrouped among the debris of their enemies, Rodriguez looked out at the stars with new understanding. Humanity had passed its first test as a spacefaring civilization, and the grade was written in the wreckage of those who had underestimated them. All units, this is Phoenix Command, he broadcast. Mission accomplished. Time to go home and figure out what we're going to do with the rest of the galaxy. The war was over, but humanity's real journey was just beginning. They had proven that with enough determination, creativity, and the willingness to never give up, even the most impossible challenges could be overcome. Just like humanity's victory came from the compound effect of countless small innovations, building into overwhelming strength, your success follows the same principle. Want to discover how this powerful force can transform your life? Check out my video on the power of compounding. It's the same unstoppable momentum that turned Earth from a target into a fortress. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations for over 10,000 years. Its crystalline walls had echoed with the voices of emperors and the pleas of the conquered. But today, for the first time in recorded history, it trembled with something new: fear of a species that had been unknown. Just 12 months ago, Ambassador Susan Clark walked across the polished floor with the measured stride of someone who had learned to carry the weight of an entire species on her shoulders. At 45, she had spent her career as a diplomat, negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges between nations that now seemed quaint compared to the cosmic stage she now occupied. Her simple black suit stood in stark contrast to the elaborate robes and exotic forms of the alien representatives. But her presence commanded attention in a way that no amount of ceremonial decoration could match. The council speaker, a being whose species had ruled 3 star systems for millennia, struggled to maintain his composure as he addressed the human delegation. His voice, translated through quantum communication arrays, carried a tremor that betrayed his carefully maintained diplomatic facade. "Ambassador Clark," he began, his words echoing through the vast chamber. "1 year ago, your species was classified as a pre-space flight civilization. Today you stand before us as the conquerors of the Draxian Empire." He paused, his alien features unable to hide his disbelief. "You defeated them in less than 12 months. A feat that 3 combined galactic fleets could not accomplish in 50 years of warfare." Susan smiled with the quiet confidence of someone who had watched her species rise from the ashes of near extinction and emerge stronger than ever. "We had motivation, council speaker. They threatened our home." The simplicity of her words carried more weight than any military threat. Behind her, General Patricia Stone and Dr. Rebecca Hayes flanked the podium like guardians of humanity's new place in the galaxy. Stone's weathered face bore the scars of 3 weeks of desperate fighting, while Hayes carried herself with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had rewritten the laws of physics through sheer determination. Their presence sent a clear message that resonated through every corner of the galaxy. Earth was no longer a target waiting to be conquered. It was a fortress defended by beings who had learned to turn impossible challenges into opportunities for innovation. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. See, the galaxy had expected humanity to follow the typical pattern of newly spacefaring civilizations: rapid expansion, territorial conquest, the establishment of a galactic empire. What they got instead was something unprecedented in cosmic history. "We're not conquerors," Susan continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for 7 billion souls. "We're protectors. We'll defend our world and our allies with everything we have, but we'll also offer friendship to those who come in peace." The council members exchanged nervous glances. They had created something unprecedented, a species with the power to reshape galactic politics, but no apparent desire for conquest. In their experience, such restraint was either a sign of weakness or a temporary condition before inevitable expansion. "What are your territorial demands?" asked the representative from the Alteran Federation, his translucent form flickering with anxiety. What tribute do you require from those who wish to trade with your system? Susan's laugh was genuine, carrying the warmth of someone who had learned to find humor in the most serious situations. Tribute. We don't want tribute. We want to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. But we also want to explore, to learn, to discover what's out there among the stars. The silence that followed was deafening. The species that had defeated the galaxy's most feared military force was asking for nothing more than the right to exist and explore. It was a concept so foreign to galactic politics that several council members struggled to process it. Captain Rodriguez, now bearing the title Admiral of the Earth Defense Fleet, stepped forward to conclude the session. His uniform bore the insignia of a rank that hadn't existed a year ago, commanding a fleet that operated on principles that violated every known rule of military science. 1 year ago, you ignored us, he said, his voice carrying the weight of every battle fought and every life lost. You let the Draxians attack our world because you thought we were primitives who couldn't defend ourselves. His eyes swept across the assembled aliens. You wanted a war with humanity? Congratulations, you got one, and you lost. The truth of his words hung in the air like a challenge. The galaxy's established powers had stood by while Earth burned, assuming that the conflict would follow the predictable pattern of technological superiority overwhelming primitive resistance. Instead, they had witnessed the birth of something new, a species that treated impossible odds as merely another problem to solve, as the human delegation prepared to depart. The council speaker made one final attempt to understand these bewildering creatures. What message should we send to the other civilizations? How should they prepare for contact with humanity? Susan paused at the chamber's entrance, her silhouette framed against the cosmic vista beyond. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we want to build, to explore, to discover what wonders the universe holds. Her voice carried the warmth of genuine friendship alongside the unmistakable edge of absolute resolve. But also tell them something else. We are humanity. We come in peace. Don't make us come in war. The warning was delivered with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather, but every being in the chamber understood its significance. They had witnessed what happened when humanity was forced to fight for survival. None of them wanted to discover what would happen if they were forced to fight for conquest as the human delegation departed. They left behind a galaxy forever changed. The established order of technological superiority and military conquest had been shattered by a species that had learned to turn disadvantages into advantages, to find strength in diversity, and to achieve the impossible through sheer determination. In the Sol system, massive defense platforms now orbited Earth, like protective angels, their designs based on principles that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Human colonies were spreading to Mars and the outer planets, each one a testament to the species' refusal to be confined by limitations. And in the deepest reaches of space, human exploration vessels carried a message that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. We are humanity. We survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We turned our greatest weakness, our inability to agree on anything, into our greatest strength. We are here to explore, to learn, to build bridges between worlds. The universe had learned a lesson that would reshape the destiny of countless civilizations. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to survive, adapt, and overcome any challenge through the power of compound innovation. Just like humanity's victory came from countless small innovations building into overwhelming strength, your success follows the same principle. Every challenge you overcome, every skill you develop, every lesson you learn compounds into something greater. Want to discover how this powerful force can transform your life? Check out my video on the power of compounding. It's the same unstoppable momentum that turned Earth from a target into the guardian of galactic peace.